Welcome to today's webinar. Hope you all are keeping well. My name is Kumudini and I will be your host for today's session. Today's session is on 5 key elements that buyers look for in HR technologies. My colleague Isha will help me in moderating the chat. In today's session, we will share with you the core aspects of a product that you must consider in your product design. And now I will move on to introduce our speakers for the event. The session will be delivered by two experts from Harbinger's consulting team, Subodh Bhide and Smita Kanakula. Hi Subodh.
Hi, Kumudini.
Hi Smita.
Hi, Kumantu.
Subodh heads the product and technology strategy consulting group, and Smita is a UX evangelist specializing in crafting user experiences for enterprise applications. With that, let me move on to Subodh and ask him to just set up some context for all of us. Thank you, Subodh. Over to you.
Thank you, Kumudini, and thank you everyone for joining us in this webinar. And Smita, a big thank you for taking the time out for joining us and enlightening us on some of the interesting things that you do on the design thinking side of it. So just to set a quick context of this particular topic for this webinar. So the consulting team at Harbinger, we frequently talk with our customers who are the technology providers to HR communities. And we also get a chance to talk with their end customers who are like HR managers or recruitment managers. And what we try to understand through these interactions is what has been the overall user experience. Are there needs for any kind of workflow optimization? How are new features going to fit into that particular market segment in that particular situation in which that company is? And what we have realized is that the whole buying process is something that turns out to be very important. It is during this stage that expectations are set in terms of what is needed from the product. Technology providers are able to meet some of the requirements. Some unmet needs get discovered at that time. And what we thought is that the traditional B2B buyer journey is very well known. It has been studied quite a lot in universities, several companies follow it. But what is really missing is to understand what goes on inside the buyer's mind during the whole buying process or the first initial phases of using the product. And that is where we are applying design thinking into the whole process to sort of get a glimpse of how the HR managers and recruiter managers are thinking about these products. So for today's webinar, Smita, she will sort of guide us through how this process works. And then we'll be telling you about 5 elements which are perhaps like the common denominators that stood out from each of these conversations. So with that, I'll welcome Smita to share her thoughts and how she approaches the overall problem statement. So Smita, welcome and over to you.
Thanks, Subodh. Yeah. So when we talk about buyer journey, first of all, we have to understand HR role and how it has changed over past 1 decade. So if we think about 2010, usually the HR role was more into, they were handling different spreadsheets, lengthy forms and files. But if we look at today's HR and beyond like 2020, usually they are using very sophisticated smart softwares. Similarly, if we talk about the department as such, there were like 1 or 2 people department, but now they have people in different who are specialized in different verticals like employee engagement, talent acquisition, talent management, so on and so forth. So this all things are like HR role has evolved in a way that earlier it was more into the supporting or administrative kind of a work, but nowadays they are more like an influencer or a kind of a decision maker kind of a role they are playing nowadays. So this is how we see the overall transformation which happened with the HR role. Now when we understood HR role, let us see how HR as a buyer experience the buyer's journey. So to give you an example, think about like Michelle is a HR manager who works with 5,000 plus employee company. Mainly she like her workforce is blue collar workforce, and consider a situation where Michelle wants to have background check solution for her company. Usually the journey of searching something will be like very similar to B2B buyer's journey, which starts with problem identification. In this case, she wants to have some solution for background verification. The next stage, she will try to like explore multiple options, and in that exploration she might come across 2 or 4 different probable options, and she will start evaluating those probable options. But you, as a HR tech solution provider, HR technology solution provider, will be interested in knowing what will make Michelle take some solution from evaluate stage to selection stage. So there is the place where we want to understand what exactly matters to Michelle when she shifts some solution from evaluate stage to select stage. So we were also having similar kind of a question in our mind. What we have done is we have tried to apply design thinking as a method. We took a tool which is like empathy map, and we used a technique which is like in-depth interview. And we interview buyer, in this case Michelle. We asked her a couple of questions where we got the answer to what she says. uh, when we have those answers, we mostly the questions are open-ended. So we get to know how Michelle thinks when she evaluate the solution. And when we got to know how she thinks, we probed further to understand what exactly she will do. So that those kind of probing gives us insights of what she does, and overall we observe how she is going through this evaluate stage, and that gives us the answers, the kind of emotions she goes through, like excitement of having like some solution, overwhelmed with the multiple options which are available, and anxious of picking and selecting a appropriate option which is suitable for her organization. After synthesizing all this finding, we came to the key findings from this particular empathy map as a tool. The key findings are based on the Michelle's interview, of course, are more like for her, the implementation duration is very important, because implementation duration will define how quickly the application can be used by employees.
Mhm.
Second, she is already using couple of other applications as a HR tech, like HR in HR space. So how this new solution is best fit in that particular ecosystem is also important factor her to decide. The next point is she follows different HR leaders, and leaders talk about employee trains, pearls, which is derived from the data. So she wants to know the data insights. And the very like last but not least, which is very important factor for her to decide any solution, is how clear the pricing model is, so that she can take those insights and put forward her her selection to the C-level executives who are mainly involved into the final stage of decision making. So this is all about Michelle's, how we have used empathy map and how we are able to understand what Michelle thinks during the evaluate stage. With this, I will take a pause and hand it over to Subodh, who can help us what we have come as 5 key elements.
Sure. Thanks, Smita. And that was this is so powerful, and I think it really gives a good glimpse of how a person works around a particular problem. One question that came to my mind when you were sort of explaining this is, you have put Michelle in the center of this universe. So if you were to do this empathy map for a broader set of HR population, would you have similar findings or would those be different?
So Subodh, it will be partially yes. There may be chances like 40% findings will be similar, but
Mhm.
it rest of the 60 will differ based on the company where that HR person is working on, what is the size of the company, what kind of workforce they have, are their employees are tech savvy or not. So all those different parameters will have impact on that 60%, which will be which will be very significant considering HR provider understanding uh, their user persona.
Got it. Got it. Okay. And I think as a part of this webinar, we had also thought of doing a quick poll and getting some insights from the audience about it. So, Kumudini, can you bring up the poll, please? And while she does that, the question is that what aspects do your buyers talk about the most when you engage with them in product demos or in sales conversations? So I think this is a multiple select or multi-select kind of a poll, so you can select more than one option. So we see that the results are coming in. Let's give it another 10 seconds for people to respond.
Okay, so with that, let me end the poll, Subodh,
Sure.
and share the results.
All right. So it seems like the pricing model is something that's on top of everyone's mind. Data security and configurability, and surprisingly, ready-made AI components hasn't made the cut. Okay, I think we will see why that has happened. If we can make the poll go away. Okay, so with what Smita said about 40% of the things remaining same and looking at the poll results, let's take a look at the 5 key elements that we thought or which sort of came up from the several conversations that we had, which sort of we saw it in every conversation. And of course, there were other aspects to it as well, which did not make the top 5. So maybe we'll talk about it towards the end of this presentation. So let's begin with that. So the very first one is about data. I think data security was one of the top answers on the poll. So what our findings said is like data is supreme for HR, since they own the employee data, they own the organization data. They want to ensure that in whichever technology they are putting it, it is a good custodian of that. And what really matters to them is their data secure in your product? Uh, is the data interoperable? Whether a technology provider likes it or not, but what the HR require is that the data should be easily be movable from one product to another product. We have talked with HR managers who say that they're stuck with a particular HR software because they're just not able to retrieve data out of it. So data interoperability is something that's big on their mind. The third one is this data auditable? Can they dissect the data and look for insights in it? Can they do compliance reporting from the data that the product collects? And can they build their own custom reports? Something that helps them present better information to their senior management. Next is actionable insights. And I think this is something which is very, very important, especially in today's economy, in today's global pandemic situation. HR, they are under a lot of stress to look at the data, get some insights from it, and present to whoever is asking them questions. And some of the examples that we have seen in recent months is that the CSO of Workday has stressed upon having newer data privacy laws, better security standards, especially in a post-COVID world. HR Open Standards Consortium, they are working hard to build new standards for data exchange. And with all the HR managers that we have been talking with, I think they are working 24/7 to see whether the data that they have been collecting in these applications, whether it is what insights they can derive from that. The second aspect is about integration, and integration is something that is very, very fundamental to the whole ecosystem now. And the reason for that is an HR department can easily use over a dozen products. So they have an HRIS, they have a payroll system, they have employee engagement, they have performance systems, they have benefits administration systems, and nowadays even learning systems in their ecosystem. And unfortunately, several of these applications, they talk with each other through traditional file-based data exchange. And unfortunately, the whole file-based data exchange mechanism is error prone. There are communication problems. So people need to look at error files and figure out what is wrong with them, and so on. So it's a lot there's a lot of effort involved. I'm sure several of you must be getting complaints from your customers saying that, hey, this is not working, and then you figure out that the data that was being imported was of a very poor quality. So a solution to that, and something that we have seen everyone is adopting, is to build connectors. And these connectors use APIs. They work in real time. They work in an automated way. You configure them once and then you use them several times. They have multiple ways in which they can do synchronization. It could be event driven, it could be real time, it could be in a batch processing way, and so on. And all of this can happen in possibly the least or in the most error-free way, with least number of errors and anxious moments coming out because of improper data exchange. And some of the examples that we see recently, we have seen this for several years, but the recent ones are job boards. They want to integrate with Glassdoor to get some of the employer ratings onto next to the job description, perhaps. Then we have seen Skillsoft's per CPO application work with SuccessFactors LMS to get course content from there. And in general, Harbinger, we have been building HR applications for close to like 17 years now. And in the past 7 to 8 years of that, we have seen literally every product owner wants to build connectors into their application. And so much so that in this duration, we have built over 60 different connectors that integrate diverse set of HR applications with each other. So all of this ties down to the fact that integration is now becoming very, very fundamental to the whole ecosystem. And in order for your product to have a winning chance in a competitive bidding scenario, integration is something like a must-have. Moving to the third element that we discovered was having products that are self-serve capable or providing self-help capabilities in the product itself. And the reason for that is, I think Smita mentioned that the persona of the HR managers have changed. They have become tech savvy. They are decision makers now. They're far more intelligent in terms of evaluating products. And they're very impatient. So they hate lengthy implementation cycles. They want something that's quick and running out of the box. They want systems that have built-in setups in them, that use templates, that use ready-made workflows to get things done. They want different types of wizards, which are based on different tools, or they want customizations that can be done through these wizard-based interfaces. And they're looking for ready-made reports. So if it's a common HR use case, then they want the system to give ready reports out of the box. And lastly, since they are a lot impatient now, they want to get answers to their questions immediately. So does your product have a user community, and can you give your customers an access to that community? So that way they can perhaps talk with their fellow users and get answers to their questions. And some of the examples that I love to talk about for self-serve products is Salesforce. Salesforce, it is ready out of the box. Literally everything that's needed within a traditional sales cycle is present when you implement it. Uh, you implement it yourself. You don't need like a team to do that for you, because they give a lot of wizards that you can use for different kinds of customizations. And some of our customers, they are really visionary on their product roadmap. So they are already building page designers, they are using workflow wizards, they are using custom reporting tools built within their product itself, so that HR managers, recruiters can just use those tools and build the required workflows. And all of this requires zero coding. It does not require for you to be well versed with .NET or Java or PHP, nothing like that. Everything is done through a wizard-based interface. Moving to the fourth element, this is something interesting, and it happens to fall on the pricing side. And I think pricing was the top-rated response on our survey. So, what does this exactly mean? So, the traditional way of pricing and billing around do like a per employee per month thing, an annualized contract, that is too rigid nowadays. And in today's economy, everyone wants flexibility. So the most preferred way is to have flexible pricing. And this flexibility is not just at a user account level, but it should go almost to a component level. So you need to have metering on your components. You need to track usage of certain features, and then provide pricing on top of it. There is a need for giving out return on investment reports from these applications. So someone uses, if someone is trying to compare your product with something else, they should be able to say, okay, after implementing, let's say, this applicant tracking system, is my cost per hire going to go up, or it's going to come down? What is it going to be? And lastly, what we discovered is that HR managers, they're okay paying add-on fees. So if they feel that they need certain additional components, or they need to use the system in an extended way, they are okay to do that. But they want to start with a basic fee structure first, and then get charged for additional components on top of it. And something that we have seen Atlassian do for several years. For those of you who are not aware about Atlassian, so this is an Australian company that builds project management tools. They build collaboration platforms. And Jira is one of their popular applications. And what they do is that they sell Jira at a very basic fee. And every add-on feature that you put on top of it, they would charge you like a add-on fee on top of that basic pricing. And of course, you can scale it back anytime you want. So that gives great flexibility to whoever is buying that particular product. Moving to the fifth element in this particular series, and that is about building app extensions and putting it on marketplaces, or even building marketplaces of your own. And the whole idea is to build plugins of your product that you can add onto other enterprise platforms, host it on their enterprise marketplaces. And the reason is primarily to facilitate a lot of in-context interaction. So what in-context interaction means is that without leaving one application, you're able to do another application's activity from within inside it. And what this results in is better engagement, and the user adherence, it increases. Because so it's, for example, you're using Outlook, and you can set up a meeting from within Outlook itself. Now, both of these are very separate actions. Outlook is used for emails, whereas meeting setup is done by the calendar app, but you get that in the same interface. So you are now more adhered towards using Outlook in a more and more. So the same concept applies in context of building app extension as well. And some of the popular examples that we have seen, so two of them are from Cornerstone, one in which they have built a plugin for Zoom, where you can stream the entire training session directly on Zoom. So rather than closing Cornerstone, logging into Zoom, scheduling a meeting over there, getting the URL back, all of this happens in an automated way because there is a Cornerstone plugin on the Zoom marketplace. Similarly, what Cornerstone has done is that they have built a sort of a Salesforce application for trainings. So the sales personnel who want to get trained can get the training done from within Salesforce itself. So they don't need to separately log into Cornerstone. Better Works, they have built a chatbot for Microsoft Teams from where it can be used and to do employee surveys. And at the same time, Harbinger, we have been building several chatbots. One of them, it works with Outlook to answer very basic HR policy related questions so that we get responses without even having to talk with an HR manager. So all of this happens from within Outlook. So no one really needs to log out and do that. So the whole idea is to extend your application into some other popular application and get the most of it, most benefit for your application. So in order to summarize what we have seen so far, let's take a look at the overall, what all we have talked in this webinar. So the first thing is that the conventional B2B buyer journey, you need to visualize it differently through the design thinking lens. And that is what Smita sort of explained to us. The second aspect which she told us is that HR buyers, they are now demanding a better ROI from the technologies in which they are investing. And as a result of that, these are the 5 key elements that we thought are the most prominent ones that HR product owners like some of you have joined us, you should seriously look at these things. Now the obvious question is, are these the only 5? So the answer is that no. We also got some feedback that okay, we should have AI, or we should have a deeper data analytics, or we should perhaps use blockchain in some cases. But those are very, very situation specific. Those are very, very market specific. So that's why they did not bubble up in these top 5. So that being said, in case there is a situation where you feel that your market, your potential buyers are perhaps thinking of something different and you need like a custom list of key elements, then you can always approach us. We can run a similar exercise with you and your customers involved in that, and give you a custom recommendation list that you can further implement in your product roadmap. So with that, I will hand it over back to Kumudini for a quick round of question and answers with all of you.
Sure. Thank you, Subodh, and thank you, Smita. So now I open up for question answers, and we have our first question. I think Smita can take that up. So it says, how long does empathy mapping takes? How long does it take, empathy mapping?
Okay. So it will range from 3 to 4 weeks of efforts, I will say. It is again dependent on how many users we can interview. So to interview 8 to 12 users to do the empathy mapping, it takes almost 3 to 4 months. 3 to 4 weeks time.
Sure. Thank you, Smita. And there's one more question. I think this is a little interesting one, which says, our products are already launched. Can this exercise be done after the launch?
Yeah, definitely. Empathy mapping to understand the buyer's behavior and how they look at the solution can be done even after the product is launched, because then you already have some kind of a user persona or buyer's persona. We can have those buyers interview, and then we can think how we can increase that user base. So we can do it in any stage of product. That empathy mapping, we can even use it to understand what can be the product road ahead will be, and to find out the features as well. So yeah, we can do it in any stage of the product.
Oh, that's cool, Smita. Thank you. Okay, so for the interest of time, I think we will not take more questions for now, but we will get back to those questions on email. So let me just thank all our participants for taking their time out for today's webinar. And I hope it was an insightful session. We will arrange for the webinar recording to be sent across to you. And in case you have any questions, follow-up questions, please do drop us a line at consulting@harbingergroup.com, and we would be more than happy to answer them for you. We wish you all the best of health. Stay safe.